Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate today closer events to the state of Israel, namely the situation in the Gaza Strip, Jordan, Lebanon, as well as the situation in Judea and Samaria. Before all that, I'd like to highlight that today we mark day 559 since the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates committed the atrocities of October 7th. And today we're talking about reported progress as the first topic in regard to negotiations between Israel and the Islamist Hamas. More on that shortly. But before all that, I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Brigadier General in Reserve, Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence at Mossad, as well as a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate, and Colonel in Reserve, Dr. Anan Wehbe, formerly an advisor at the Prime Minister's Office, currently a senior researcher at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University, and a lecturer at Haifa University. It's great to see you both. And Dr. Sofrin, let's focus initially on the current progress with regard to the talks vis-a-vis Egyptian mediation. Of course, progress does not necessarily mean that we're inching a resolution, but nonetheless, we are seeing some light on the fringes of the tunnel, if I may. Go ahead.
We really are progressing, but nevertheless, the gaps between the two sides are still huge. That means Hamas is insisting that at the final stage, Israel will withdraw from Gaza Strip, Israel will stop the war, they will have international guarantees for that, and therefore for Israel it's unacceptable, and we're still bargaining, even though there is a frame that is agreed upon of holding the fire for about at least 45 days to release some people that are imprisoned in Hamas hands and in return to release people that are imprisoned in Israel. But still, the final stage is not agreed upon on both sides, and therefore there is a long way to go until we get to some agreement that will enable in the end to stop this war.
Thank you, General Sofrin. The gaps are obviously on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And therefore, Colonel Wehbe, when we're looking at the Israeli demands, which includes, of course, the disarming of the Islamist Hamas being non-negotiable from Israel's perspective, including the governance of this terror organization post-war, are also one of those equations that Israel is unwilling to relent on, something that is seemingly trickling down into the leadership in Cairo, but Hamas is still living in delusion?
Yeah, Hamas is really in a very big problem right now. He's trying somehow to hold the position in the Gaza Strip, and he knows that first of all, he's in a very bad economic right now situation where Iran is under the stress of the West together with the US. The Arab states are moving much more towards an agreement with Israel to settle down the situation, to stop the war, and the interests are much different than the scenarios that the Hamas desires. So here, I think that the philosophy of the resistance of the Brotherhood and of Hamas, as well, is rejected totally by the Arab regimes, the current Arab regimes. And it's a big opportunity to disarm Hamas, to disarm this kind of model that can threat later on those countries and regimes from inside, but pushing towards stopping the war. Israel demand is that the leaders, the commanders of Hamas who remained in power must leave the strip. And there's still a big gap between the two sides, and Israel is very serious in bringing a new reality in the strip. There are a lot of voices from the Palestinian community that are saying we want to leave Gaza Strip, we want to move elsewhere for a while, for good. It doesn't matter at the moment. They want to leave to a better reality and better conditions that can continue their life. They do not want to exist anymore under the control of Hamas as a terror group that is right now also taking them to further risks, and they can see no light at the end of this tunnel.
It's very interesting to know that over 75%, according to a number of polls, this is the average number, 75% of the Gazan population is actually keen on relocating from Gaza for either temporary or permanently, as you mentioned. And you don't hear the European institution, the European Union, namely, or countries in the region, pointing out that their refusal to allow them to do so is actually putting them at harm's way and forcing them to do so against their will. It seems to me a little bit precarious, and we need to dive deeper into international law during times of war. What applies to countries who refuse populations from relocating, whether or not this is a breach of international law and the Geneva Convention. But General Sofrin, before we move into Judea and Samaria, I'd like to touch on the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. It came out and announced that it arrested some 16 individuals, members of the Muslim Brotherhood, who were trained and then relocated into Jordan to prepare for a potential coup against King Abdullah II.
Yes, it's not only against King Abdullah II, but it's also applied to being able to hit Israel from the Jordanian soil. That means that these people were trained and sent probably by the Iranians. They began to build what we call some labs inside Jordan and to produce long-range missiles, all kinds of missiles that can be launched not only on Jordan but against Israel as well. And this is part of the attempt or the effort that the Iranian regime is trying to get control on Jordan as what we call as a area of interest because of the fact that it has a border with Israel, the ability to get from Jordan into the West Bank, to get weapon systems and assistance for people who are fighting the IDF inside Judea and Samaria. And therefore, this is very important for the Iranians to get hold on Jordan and to try to, on one way, to topple King Abdullah II and to destabilize the regime there in order to get the Palestinians to get control because they're the majority of the population. And on the second hand, and not less important, is to be able to hit Israel and to deliver weapon systems and assistance to people in Judea and Samaria to fight Israel.
Indeed. Well, Colonel Webe, as Dr. Sofri mentioned, they found munitions, according to the official statement by the Jordanian authorities, with a range of 3 to 5 kilometers, meaning that it could potentially threaten Israeli communities along the borderline. Once again, the longest territorial or land border that Israel possesses on its eastern flank, and the Iranians since 2014 have been working quite vigorously following the famous 9 points that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei published on methods to destroy the state of Israel, in which method 7 included flooding the so-called West Bank with both munitions and funds to allow terror to thrive. That is, of course, utilizing the Kingdom of Jordan for the transit of those illicit materials, munitions, funds, and other tools in order to basically attack the state of Israel. Now, this is threatening also Jordan proper, as we see the Jordanian authorities are quite vigorous in their efforts to thwart those type of attempts. But what's interesting is that they were members of the Muslim Brotherhood, which the Islamist Hamas is an offshoot of.
Yeah, internally, when we talk about the Kingdom of Jordan, there are two sides that can be dangerous to the stability of the regime from inside. The one is the Brotherhood, and the other is the Palestinians. The Palestinians, right now, after the long history that we know, are still silent. There are some voices here and there. But lately, we could hear the brothers started somehow to act. And 2 days ago, the regime has arrested one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan. They have their connections to Iran. Iran is still somehow trying to interfere, to smuggle weapons to Jordan and then to act. Once again, they use those proxies for the benefit of Iran itself, that is trying somehow to build a new strategy with the remaining proxies after that she has lost Hamas and Hezbollah that is living right now. Some of them are leaving Lebanon. The Houthis have also been under military attack and stress from the US. So they are trying somehow to build this new strategy, old and new strategy from the West Bank against Israel. I think that Jordan knows very well that this threat is existential in this case because the kingdom is surrounded by failed states and the hybrid arenas that there are a lot of militias. There is no real control of central authority in Iraq or in Syria. So the threat is all over. And the last thing that Jordan needs right now is to use its borders with Israel in order to confront Israel from east. Israel know that, and from the Israeli point of view, the long line with Jordan is very important to the national security of Israel, and of course the stability in Jordan and protecting all the borders of Jordan is very important for Israel and for the Arab states as well that can be the same under the same kind of threat from the Iranian strategy.
Absolutely. Israel has been very proactive, as you said. Jordan is very important to the state of Israel. It's defined, quote unquote, as Israel's strategic depth of field in light of the depth of the territory of Jordan, in contrast to territories west of the Jordan River, namely the state of Israel, which is a lot narrower in size. But the connection between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Ayatollah regime is historic. Pre 1979, there were deep rooted connection between Ruhollah Khomeini, with elements of the Muslim Brotherhood. According to many papers on this matter, he has attained much inspiration of the Brotherhood, which he ultimately also inserted into his own understanding of how to advance the revolution, so to speak, which is a revolutionary regime of the 1979 of the Islamic Republic, ultimately found a certain connection. It's an unholy connection, Sunni versus Shia, but nonetheless, they do have common goals, and the path to that might find common interest, so to speak. But let's shift gears to Judea and Samaria, where we do see continued efforts by IDF in collaboration with the ISA and Border Police Special Operators to thwart Iranian efforts to entrench both new terror cells as well as old terror cells within the territories. At the same time, we also see that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has called for the Fatah Council, the large council, to meet up later in April. I think it's on the 23rd, which also indicates a certain shift with certain of the various clans attached to the organization and the intentions for the so-called day after. General Sofrian, what can you tell us about that?
I think that when you look at Judea and Samaria, we have two dimensions. The first one is the fight that the IDF and the ISA are ongoing effort to unroot all the what we call terrorist cells inside Judea and Samaria, which is a combination of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and some of the people of the Fatah that crossed the lines and joined them and to fight. And if you look at the structure of these battalions or organization or semi-organizations, each one is what we call is a local one. That means you have in Jenin, in the refugee camp of Jenin, in Jenin city, at the area of Tulkarem, in the refugee camps of Tulkarem, surrounding Tulkarem, at the villages that are on the way, on what we call on the slope to the Jordan Valley and so on. And each one has its own capabilities, each one has its own weapon systems, and you have to fight each one separately. That means there's no reserve units to come and to be transferred from area to area to enforce. And the fact is that you have to fight each one separately, and that means that you have to divide your efforts. That means each one has to fight separately in each area. And that means a lot of units fighting simultaneously in the same neighborhood. That's the first phase. The second phase is if you look at the future of the Judea and Samaria, Mahmoud Abbas is turning old enough, and he is looking at the future and doesn't see it. He is not going to live forever, and therefore he is declared that he's going to nominate a deputy president, which is a precedent because never been before. He wanted to stay in power only by himself, without anyone risking him. And now they begin thinking about considering to appoint someone who is going to replace him when he's not able to be to function, or something else that happens to him. And therefore, he wants to call this council and to get their approval for that. He is going for Hassan al-Sheikh, who is loyal to him and very close to him. And many people object this person. And I'm not sure that it's going to be very smooth for him to get the approval of everyone to appoint Hassan al-Sheikh to be vice president. And it's going to be very interesting, this meeting, and what kind of moves does he want to apply. Yeah. On the other hand, he's still operating his what we call security apparatus to assist Israel and to cooperate with Israel to demolish all these cells of Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas in Judea and Samaria. And he knows that the biggest threat on the Palestinian Authority is the fact that Hamas, which is now very badly beaten in Gaza, wants to get control on Judea and Samaria and to be the sole representative of the Palestinian people. And this is the biggest risk, and they have to face it.
Very tense. He is turning November 15th. He's going to be 90 years old and not in the best health. So he has already visited various medical facilities, both here in Israel, in the United States, in Europe, and elsewhere, for various treatments. And the fringe or the current state of relative stability that is in Judea and Samaria is also his doing, and the fact that he's still alive, not by actually doing much, but rather just being there. So we're waiting and seeing how things will evolve from there. But due to the fact that we don't have very much time, unless you want to say something on this topic, Dr. Webb, I'd like to move to Lebanon. Is that okay with you, or would you like to throw in a word?
I just want to say that the Israeli strategy of isolating Gaza alone and this split in the Palestinian side did not serve Israel much. It was failed consequently, and that's why right now we are dealing with Gaza and also with the West Bank in order to stabilize the situation again.
Right. Well, it is a complex issue to say the least. But let's shift gears to Lebanon, where we're seeing many complexities at hand. Israel is also launching multiple strikes against Hezbollah terror operatives on the one hand, who are breaching the terms of the ceasefire, and Israel, as it pledged to do, continues to enforce the ceasefire. The council is being informed beforehand, and there are ongoing talks between the so-called High Council, Monitoring Council by the United States and France, and the IDF, in coordination also with UNIFIL. At the same time, we're seeing that President Joseph Aoun traveled to Qatar and returned with some $60 million in support for the Lebanese armed forces and for their salaries and other aspects related to the Lebanese armed forces, which I assume is positive, all things considered. What can you tell us about that?
I think that the retaliation of Israel against Hezbollah was very much needed, and this is helping really the Lebanese government and especially the new leaders in Lebanon, President Aoun, in order to make the real decisions against Hezbollah, to be disarmed and to be integrating totally in the Lebanese state, also in the politics, as well in the community, in the education, to be part of Lebanon at the national level and not a proxy for Iran, and building an alternative state inside Lebanon, an alternative army serving foreign national interests, and this total compliance with the UN Resolution 1701. This will gain this support from the Gulf states, and I predict that later on, Lebanon as well as Syria, and at some point, will be likely to be part of the normalization process of the whole interaction of the region with Israel, and this can bring a real change, after disarming Hezbollah. We can hear similar voices coming from Amal, from Nabi Berri, the head of the parliament. He is a very old politician and well known. He is also silently supporting disarming Hezbollah and integrating the whole Shia community again inside the Lebanese society and inside the Lebanese state.
Indeed. Meanwhile, also the president, Joseph Aoun, has ordered the military to remove all Hezbollah banners, flags, and anything to indicate affiliations to Hezbollah from the Lebanese capital and surrounding areas, something that is quite significant if we talk about Lebanon. But of course, it's very populist as well, so we'll have to wait and see to what degree that is relevant. Another point that we should point out, despite a lot of voices saying that Lebanon should reach out to Israel or establish some sort of normalization with Israel, we're not there yet. Nawaf Salam, the prime minister of Lebanon, is very anti-Israeli, has been very vocal in his rhetoric against Israel. On that, very briefly, Dr. Sofrin, since we don't have very much time left, 2 sentences, if you may. Go ahead.
I think that the Lebanese government has the biggest chance ever to get rid of Hezbollah and to make it look very small and very unimportant. But it's not going to be very easy, because Hezbollah is declaring that he is not willing to disarm itself, and it's not going to give up. And the Iranians are trying to supply new weapon systems on various ways, from the sea, from the air, from the ground, and they find the ways to deliver weapon systems, and therefore Hezbollah is not going to give up, is not going to vanish. And I think that even Joseph Aoun knows that if he's going to try to disarm Hezbollah, it's going to be a civil war inside Lebanon, which is going to be very brutal and very bloody. And I don't think that that's what he wishes.
I agree. Unfortunately, the situation there is very complex, and there's still much to do. But amid a dire economic situation, the West at large, and their leverage over Lebanon, also via the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank and such, they are able to leverage that in order to create a new reality. It's going to take time. People need to understand that this is going to take time. There are enough forces inside Lebanon who are yearning for change. They are strong, but not as strong as Hezbollah when we're talking domestically. So Hezbollah, while it's not able to project power outside of the borders of Lebanon these days, it's still very much a potent force for domestic matters, and therefore plunging into civil war is not going to help anyone, including Israel and including the Lebanese people in particular. A closing sentence from each of you. Dr. Wehbe, we'll start with you.
I think that Lebanon will not turn a new page before Syria will be stabilized. Right now, Iran seems to be out, but Turkey is in, and this is a new big and huge story that we will see what will be the end of this game and what implications will be to the region and in particular to Lebanon.
Dr. Sofrin?
I think that we have to see what happens on this weekend on the second meeting of the American and Iranian delegation, and where does it lead us? Is it going to go to some kind of an agreement, or is it going to blow up and then everything is all options are on the table?
Indeed. The Americans are currently, Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff in France, updating their European counterparts, while the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is currently in Moscow updating his Russian counterpart. So we're waiting to see on Saturday. They will meet in Rome, and hopefully we'll get to know more immediately thereafter. But I'd like to thank Colonel in Reserve, Dr. Anan Wehbe, and Brigadier General in Reserve, Dr. Amnon Sofrin, for all of your valuable insights. And I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Immediately also wish you happy Chag Pesach Sameach, as well as a blessed Easter. Good Friday is tomorrow, and therefore we won't air our regular updates, but nonetheless, we will air tonight our TV7 Israel news program as usual, and immediately I'd like to wish you a blessed weekend, and from us here in Jerusalem, Shalom. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.